In the zoning ordinance under section 415, there is language about having a 6-foot privacy fence. Wanted to slightly clarify, because it was clarified for me, that the general point that I made in my email to you, which is that being a licensed child care provider comes with a significant burden, significant set of rules governing what it means to be a licensed child care provider in the state of Michigan, including a number of rules for keeping kids safe, a number of rules for how sites and facilities are used. I think I quoted a specific height of fence that's required in the ordinance. It's really more general than that. So I did want to make that the point that, you know, there's general guidance on lots of things, including fencing, but I believe that that particular provision is going to be a barrier for providers that would like to establish or expand childcare in East Bay Township, and I would recommend that you remove that from the planning ordinance. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph Shropshire. I'm here on behalf of Lamar Advertising Company. I am the Vice President and General Manager here of our Traverse City branch. Recently, we ran into an issue with a sign permit. The township zoning ordinance allows for 2 billboards in the township, which we own both of them. When the ordinance was rewritten, 2010, was it 2020? It was written specifically to only allow these 2 signs, which currently exist. We came in, we applied for a permit to upgrade the one sign to a digital sign, like the other one that we have in the township that's digital, at 220 square feet. The sign ordinance allows for 300 square feet in RB zoning and only on US 31, which is where this sign is located. We're going through the ZBA process now. The sign ordinance says that it can be 300 square feet. We're way under that square footage, unless the road is 45 miles an hour or less, then it drops down to 75 square feet. We're unsure why the ordinance would have ever been written to allow for 300 square feet on US 31 and RB zoning when there is no area on US 31 that you would be able to do it in 300 square feet because of the speed limit. If the speed limit was 46 miles an hour instead of 45 miles an hour, we wouldn't even have this discussion. There would be no issue. It's clear that the ordinance was written to allow these 2 billboards because when you look at the ordinance, it says only 2 per linear mile in the township. There is only 1 linear mile on US 31. So it was written specifically for these 2 signs to exist, but now we're working to go through ZBA and get this thing approved. We believe it's an anomaly that it was intended to allow these to exist, but now we notice that the new ordinance is dropping this down to 200 square feet, which still poses the same problem. If you're going to change the ordinance to allow 200 square feet in RB zoning, which only exists on US 31, that doesn't make any sense when there is no space that the speed limit would allow for that. We're asking that, we've been talking to Claire and Bill about our ZBA application, but we're asking that you guys review this and take a look at what that really means. If we're talking about safety, and that's what the ordinance says it's intended to do, a sign that drops down that much square footage will be read by the driving public. And 1 mile an hour shouldn't make that much of a difference in the square footage that's allowed. That's all I have.
Thanks for the consideration.
Greg Pelizza from East Bay Township. At the last, this is in follow-up to some discussions at the last special meeting work session for the zoning rewrite, and at that time, stronger language was discussed and actually supported, and I thank Commissioner Gonzalez in terms of mentioning that it was a merit-filled proposition to protect the riparian buffer zone. And at that time specifically, the language was suggested to be in the wording of to restore, reestablish, and replant the entire length and continuity of the critical 50-foot zone buffer strip along waterfront. With that discussion, there was then also some comments made and discussion about what specific activity would trigger enforcement of that. And then it was discussed that perchance triggering it with some activities would be of hardship financially if it was enacted. And I was going to make a few comments to address that. Finally, it was decided that only activities that would encroach upon the actual 50-foot zone at the lakeshore would trigger enforcement of it. You know, I live on Spider Lake. Many properties on Spider Lake in East Bay Township have, over the last 10 to 20 years, undergone major changes with major revisions of the ecosystem, cutting of trees, removing of vegetation, woody plants, shoreline hardening, and sanding of the shorelines. And with that, a lot of the ecosystem has been damaged. Over the last 10 years, 20% of parcels on Spider Lake and many other lakes in our area, in the Forest Lakes area, have undergone major renovations, sales, remodeling, complete rebuilds, and major shoreline hardening. I spoke with Susan Crocus before she retired, and she gave me 20 pages of comps on all of the sales over the last 3 years in Forest Lakes of lakefront property, and the price ranges were from $500,000 to $1.2 million. Shoreline hardening projects frequently are $50,000 to $100,000. So many of the projects that are occurring in terms of revisions, rebuilds, do not really affect that shoreline 50-foot buffer zone that would then trigger restoration. So the potential cost of shoreline restoration, replanting, I would estimate is $5,000 to $10,000. And really, in the scheme of what is being spent on these projects, new homes, rebuilds, renovations, is 1% to 2% of the cost. And really, if somebody can afford the property, they should be able to afford to restore the shoreline. And specifically with trees, understory plantings, and woody vegetation and perennials. There's precedence that the ZBA has set in terms of requiring property owners to replant that zoning area. And on, I believe it was a 4399 Lakeview Trail with a very large home that was allowed on a very small non-conforming parcel. The ZBA required that property owner to restore that shoreline. And we will wait to see if that actually occurs. But there's a precedence there. There are also precedents in terms of restoring the grade after excavation and putting in measures to decrease erosion. So, a lot of things can be required at the time of permits for building. And at that time of permit, this township has the power to enforce some things. We've done a great job in terms of rewriting these zoning ordinance to protect what we have. We can go a lot further, not only to protect what we have, but to reclaim what has been lost over the last 10 to 20 years of our lake ecosystems and the protection of our water quality. So I thank the Planning Commission for its prior commitment to strengthen the language, as we discussed at the last meeting, to replant the entire length of the vegetative buffer strip. I urge you to define that triggering events then that actually would require property owners to do this to be the following. And this would clarify for those property owners as well as landscapers, developers, and realtors, what is at stake and what is required. And the first would be that the trigger should be any work on a parcel that extends to and enters into the 50-foot lakefront setback. Any major renovation, build, or rebuild on a riparian parcel. Smaller projects could be excluded at the discretion of this commission. Any major shoreline work or hardening that involves significant alterations around the ordinary high water mark. That is usually the purview of Eagle. However, that work damages the uplands that the township has jurisdiction over. Major landscape work on the upland part of the parcel should also be a trigger. A lot of these projects in terms of landscaping are very expensive, so I think the property owner should be, asked to restore the shoreline. And we should maybe consider even making a lakefront parcel home sale also a trigger, so that at the time of sale, the seller, similar to prepping their house, doing renovations, doing, kitchen remodeling and painting, they should spruce up their shoreline with native plants, vegetations, and ecologically sound investment in the property to be good land stewards. And if it's not a requirement for them, perchance it should be a requirement for the buyer at the time of the sale. So, in summary then, we all want to live on the lake. We love to live on the lake. We love to recreate on the lake. But we need to start loving the lake. And this township and this planning commission can go a long way in terms of helping us achieve that. And, part of the intent of this township is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of its citizens. But I think that should extend also to the environment. And thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you for the time.
Good evening, Judy Nemitz, East Bay Township resident. I would like to address 4 or 5 concerns tonight. First would be residential lighting. Light pollution is the easiest pollution to mitigate. A section to address responsible residential lighting needs to be implemented, and now is the time. There are 5 principles that we might want to consider in residential areas. Have a clear purpose in the light placement. Choose the right brightness that is necessary for that area, and avoid glare. Light trespass on neighboring properties should not be permitted. The use of motion sensors and timers should be instituted. Warmer color lights should be encouraged, and shielding lights and aiming them downward should be a must. Marina's specialty, that's 2-33. Marinas are not permitted in the lake area, and I think this needs additional review because the definition's really confusing. If they're not allowed, then why are we using that word? Ground-mounted solar, that's on 4.8. Clear-cutting properties for solar and wind farms needs to be addressed. This is an environmental loophole that can be disastrous in this ordinance and borders on vandalism to our trees and forest just for alternative energy. Lastly, temporary dwellings, 4.37B-2, should not be permitted. This is a change in use that has not been permitted as a use by right in the Pinewood Shores LA district for over 40 years that I know. And perhaps when the 1965 zoning of SR6 was established. This change is not consistent with the general zoning plan and master plan in place and should be removed. Camping for 7 days, 60 days max a year should not be permitted. These dwellings, or these temporary dwellings, will become short-term rentals, party places amongst $1.5 to $2 million homes that sustain the infrastructure of this township. And I mean the EMT services, the fire, the roads, the schools, taxes on home structures. These temporary dwellings have no sanitation restrictions, none. They don't have to put in a $30,000 to $50,000 wells and septics. Where will the gray water go? Where will the human waste go? Where will the garbage go? Who will enforce this and monitor this, and how? Will the police be called because of noise and nuisance? This is ludicrous and does not consider the health, safety, and welfare of homeowners. I say remove this change from the ordinance. We have 10 campgrounds within a 15-mile radius, and you just approved additional sites for Timber Ridge. So please remove 4.37B2 as a change. Lastly, I'd like you to just look at the master plan one more time and look at the Mitchell Creek and Baker Creek overlays and how it reflects to the new writing of environmental sensitive, because I think there are some things missing from the master plan again, to the consistency of this ordinance. So I'd just like you to take a second look at that. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening. Caitlin Flensky, East Bay Township resident. I believe many of the zoning revisions are favorable for the township. The draft ordinance is user-friendly and easy to navigate. Thank you to the subcommittee and Giffords Webster for working so diligently for many months on this rewrite. But I want to see the definition of marina specialty removed from this new ordinance. Marinas are not a permitted use in the lakes area. Just because they may exist does not make them legal. This term should not be created to allow a non-permitted use to occur with any sort of normalcy or legality. When your commission was considering removing the definition of cabin court from the zoning ordinance in 2021, Planning and Zoning summarized the definition and use of cabin courts for you. Size, density, and nights rented were all discussed. Boating and/or marinas were never mentioned as part of the cabin court's permitted uses. How is this use now being added years after it became non-conforming? Per the new ordinance, bed and breakfast guests are prohibited from using boats on site. Cabin courts have the potential to be much denser than B&Bs based on occupancy, and they do not have on-site supervision of a caretaker like a B&B does. Why would a cabin court allow boat usage when a less intense, more supervised B&B does not? Lastly, I know for a fact that it would be impossible to enforce. How would East Bay prevent a cabin court from renting to other properties? How would you monitor and enforce improper usage? Township staff admitted in a subcommittee meeting that regulating boats has been a huge challenge for them. And if the township were to regulate boats, it should be done via police power and not in the zoning ordinance. By including this term in the new ordinance, it opens up a huge can of worms of improper usage, commercial activity, and unfeasible enforcement to an area of low-density residential homes. Please remove the term marina specialty from the new ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Walt Barringer, East Bay resident. I live on Chandler Lake. I just wanted to tell everyone a quick story. So this weekend, I dropped my boat in the water for the first time, took my nephew for a boat ride around Chandler Lake, and I was blown away. I'm sure that the resident had wonderful intentions, but it made me realize we're spending an awful lot of time. You guys are doing an amazing job rewriting the ordinances. But again, a couple of my prior speakers here have said, well, how are we going to enforce it? How are we going to monitor it? How are we going to communicate that to the residents? I'm sure that, again, this resident probably had great intentions, but they have installed a fence in the 50-foot setback on Chandler Lake, about 15 feet off the water, and it's not running between properties, it's running across the length of the lake. Their entire front of their property is now a fence. Now, it's not a board-on-board fence, it's more of a, a link-style fence or something like that. And then I noticed a big, large dog in the yard as well. So where are those dogs' feces going? They're going directly into Chandler Lake. There's gates there and whatnot. Not going to name the property. That shouldn't be my job as a resident to turn someone in. I feel like I just did, right? But by the same token, it's a not knowing. I have a fairly new home in the community. It poured through the documents, made sure we were doing everything absolutely right, continue to do that to this day. And I think that property owners often feel like, well, it's my property. I can do whatever the heck I want to do with it, right? But I believe that whatever comes out of our ordinances needs to be so well communicated to the community. And I also think we need to have like a timestamp on everything. I mean, we have violations probably going on right now, and we have the potential for looking at the new ordinances and then suddenly saying, well, that doesn't belong there, but how do we know it's not always been there? So, it's going to be a very difficult process to enforce what I believe you guys are spending an exorbitant amount of time on. I think it's wonderful, but that is one of my concerns. So I hope that you really consider communication once we're through this process. There's also substantial lawn areas that run along the Lakes District. I believe with the new ordinance, people won't be able to cut those lawns. It says no trimming, no mowing. other than creating a filtered view to the water. So I believe that the township, again, from a shoreline restoration standpoint, if they can't cut the grass, what are they going to do? Are they going to know they can't cut their grass? What's it going to look like if they don't cut their lawn? You know, what do we do to make sure that those areas are replaced with native plants and we do shoreline restoration? Are there grants available? You know, we have tremendous amount of money for Arbutus Lake for the new park. We got a great grant for that. Are there grant monies available, you know, in the state of Michigan? Nonprofits, can we form a nonprofit? Could we give a resident back maybe half of what they spent on a lakeside restoration? Why not? The community I moved from, actually it was in Florida. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy. I moved from Florida to Michigan. What are you doing? You're going the wrong way. I disagree. I love it here. But our city had a program where you could actually put in xeriscape. You know, in Florida, water is always an issue. And the city gave you back up to $2,000 towards that project. And I just thought it was a great way to go to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the environment. I agree with Judy completely on the camping. I think camping is a problem. I wrote that in a letter to you, Claire, regarding camping. I'm particularly concerned about anyone that might camp within the 50-foot setback on the lakes. Again, I don't think that makes sense. They would be disturbing the vegetation. Where is their waste going to go? All those kind of things. I also believe that we could consider a balance between the size of a dock and a waterside deck. Right now, we have that written as 200 square feet for each. My personal belief, and I could be completely wrong, is that a dock is less invasive to that shoreline than a waterside deck. I believe there could be a balance, that maybe someone could have a 250 square foot deck, and that means they can only have 150 square foot, a 250 square foot dock, and maybe only have a 150 square foot deck to create less damage to the waterfront. And a lot of people, I think Judy had mentioned this before, like to put a T or like to do additional deck panels to avoid putting in a deck altogether. So I think that there could be a balance between those two provisions in our documents. The last thing I had was temp dwellings. I agree 100% with Judy. My thought process on that is I think it was set up to have workers come in during the harvest season so that people that were in the community that were working temporarily would be able to, you know, pick crops and things like that, whether it's apples, cherries, or whatever. My feelings are, if you're going to consider that at all, only allowed in the agricultural district. Don't allow my neighbor in the lakes area to start putting up temporary seasonal workers on their property in temporary shelters and perhaps rent it out to them while they're here picking the crops. If it's going to be done, it should be on the farmer's property, not anywhere in East Bay Township. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then another big one for me, and I'll wrap up, I've probably extended my time too long here, is septic inspections. A lot of townships in Michigan require, when a property is transferred, that the existing septic system is inspected. I believe that should be part of any building permit, especially in the lakes area, to make sure that the septic system is adequate, that it's inspected and whatnot. It may already be a requirement, it may be something with the drain commissioner, I don't know, but I just believe that the transfer of property, we should be re-looking at what environmental concerns are there relative to that piece of property when it's sold. And that's all I have, and again, thank you guys so much. You're doing a great job.
Thanks for the feedback.
Hi, Karen Luke. I am a resident of East Bay Township. I had spoken with Claire this morning, or yesterday morning, I'm sorry. As I understand it, the Forest Lakes overlay historically had said no marinas. This goes back years to when we bought our place, property in 2020. So any marina that previously has existed to this point is unlawful. This should be included in the new environmentally sensitive areas of the Forest District overlay. Max Landing, previous to Lakemore, had fishing boats with small motors. Max Landing was never a marina. Lakemore pled their case with the township to keep boats, and they were limited to 630 square feet of boats. But their boats are not fishing boats with small motors. They have multiple 140 to 200 horsepower tritoons which vacationers use, and it puts much more stress on the lake shores than a residence use. They offer Lakemore rentals and Lakemore resort rentals. Throughout the past few summers, Lakemore has frequently pushed the bounds of the rules. It has been impossible for the township to keep up, as they have one enforcement officer, as I understand it, and no boats. Lakemore has broken the rules, as they have been ticketed, and the township has failed to enforce the rules thus far. Marina usage has an adverse effect on our lake, which is contrary to what the residents want. The local residents in our area have spent $2,473,007 were raised to buy the land surrounding Turtle Cove and to place it into the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy. 120 acres have been purchased and set aside for non-development. When we had purchased our own property in 2020, the Forest Lakes Overlay said it did not allow marinas. When we moved in, we purchased with the idea of living in a residential lake environment. There were supposedly no marinas because they were not legally allowed. As I spoke with Claire this Monday morning at 9:30, I asked her about the specialty marinas on Arbutus Lake. I was told there was one, it was Lakemore, which is why I keep referring back to what Lakemore was. Which is interesting, as Dean Adams has been telling us for years that he has not been running a marina. So was his marina a lawful existence? I say no, because there are not supposed to be marinas in our area. That has been said over and over. Claire also told me the lawyer wrote the definition of a specialty marina, not the subcommittee. And she told me it would not be removed or taken out of the packet. I thought we were here to weigh the evidence. I didn't think decisions had already been made. I find it a little bit frustrating as a member of the community. I'm sorry if I sound frustrated, but I don't feel like we're being listened to. I would like the marina specialty, please, to be taken out of this, because it specifically states a facility that was lawfully in existence on the effective date of this ordinance. There are no marinas that are lawfully allowed, so there is no marina that is lawfully in existence. I ask that you take out marina specialty out of your new ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Parker. I'm here on behalf of Real Estado, which is a property owner on Lake Arbutus, owns property directly adjacent to Lakemore Marina. And we, speaking for the owners, we have the same concerns as many of the other speakers do about the inclusion of this new term, marina specialty. Primarily, I don't know what use or what purpose it serves. I think we can all agree that cabin courts are a lawful nonconforming use. The scope of that lawful nonconforming use is going to be defined by the use which was in place when it became nonconforming, regardless of what a statute says. And our concern is, our fear is, that by including this definition in your ordinance, you are unwittingly or unknowingly codifying this nonconforming use. You don't need to do it. It's unnecessary, in my opinion. Now, I see Mr. Graham's here this evening. He may have a different opinion about that, but I think it's just completely unnecessary verbiage. It's going to create red meat for lawyers in the future, and we all don't want to do that, and I think it's completely unnecessary. The policy of this township, like many townships, is that over time, you'd like to see lawful nonconforming uses sunset. They should go away, hopefully, over time. And I think by codifying this into your ordinance, inadvertently sort of sanctioning these types of lawful nonconforming uses, that's kind of contrary, in our opinion, to the policy as is expressed in your ordinance. So I think it's unnecessary. I think it causes confusion. And I think for those reasons alone, it should be removed. Now, I'm very curious to see what Mr. Graham might have to say and why he's an advocate for its inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really nervous, so. My name is Tanisha Samuel. I'm a daycare provider. My business is called Bloom and Grow Nursery. I'm here today because, well, I have to have a 6-foot fence to, up to a group home, to up 12 children. And it's really expensive, and I'd have to get funding for it. So, sorry, excuse my nervousness. So I'm basically here to ask that you guys take that rule out, and, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Did great. You're good. Thank you. Any other takers? Okay. Appreciate all the comments. We're obviously taking in a list of things, and I know we've got more conversation to come up here later, but appreciate all the feedback from everybody. We're all done with public comment. That being said, we do have some correspondence that I see on our desk. Claire, can you kind of give us an overview of what we've got before us?
So in addition to what's in your packet, you received I emailed out a large packet of additional correspondence that's come in since April 9th. So that was included in the email that I sent out this afternoon, as well as what's on your desk. It relates to daycares. It relates to a AFC home, which I'm going to discuss in a few minutes during the agenda item. It relates to, and then the remainder relates to the specialty marina. I believe there were 8 comments related to that.
Any questions for Claire on any of that? Okay. Well, moving right along, we'll move into item number 8, which is a review from our previous gathering, I think targeting Article 3. If we want to dive into that, and maybe Claire, you want to set the table for us?
Sure. So I was hoping we could first go into a couple different policy-related items that have come up since our last meeting related to the zoning ordinance rewrite, and then we can go into the Article 3 follow-up, which includes seasonal docks, impervious surface, and the lot width on low-density residential. But there's 5 items that have come up that either applicants that are interested in items that are perhaps not addressed the way that we may want to in the zoning ordinance. So I just wanted to bring them to the attention as we're going through the ordinance. So the first item I did want to discuss is specialty marinas, because we do have Brian Graham joining us, and I don't think he's going to be on the call for the entire meeting. So did want to make a clarification that I apologize that there's an interpretation that I said that they would not be removed from the ordinance. That's a policy discussion. So I appreciate you bringing that to the townships, to this meeting, because that's exactly what we're here for. So the specialty marinas, the subcommittee had, and Brian Graham worked with the subcommittee for the entire process that we went through. We had communicated to Brian that there were these uses that were legal nonconforming, the cabin courts, as well as some of the cabin courts were renting boats. So basically what the subcommittee, from my understanding, had communicated was that we were looking for guidance on how to regulate moving forward these rentals that had been in existence. We were looking for them not to expand, not to enlarge. So basically, they're legal nonconforming. How do we best address them in our ordinance? So this was the first draft, and I think it's a good conversation point to move forward with the Planning Commission, with the public. And Brian is here, so Brian, you're more than welcome to address any items related to this.
Well, I was asked to provide a definition for a specialty marina. I did that. That was my understanding, that the township or the planning commission or the subcommittee wanted to be sure that it was clear in the ordinance that these existing small marinas that were associated with a cabin port would not be expanded. So that was what I understood to be the reasoning behind creating that definition. I did that. I mean, clearly, whether you retain that definition in the zoning ordinance is a policy choice. If you do retain the definition, then you need to use that term elsewhere in the zoning ordinance to be sure that there's a need for the definition.
And if it was, if this definition did stay in the ordinance, it would be referenced in non-conforming. So it would refer back to non-conforming uses that cannot be enlarged or expanded. So,
No, not at this time. But just as a point of clarity, because I know there will be a lot of questions out there, that's something we can follow up with afterward with Claire outside of this meeting. This is more for dialogue and feedback on each one of these, so I think right now we'll just keep it amongst the commission. Questions of that? And I want to have feedback on each one of these so that we can kind of at least have it out with each one of the commissioners.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't see why we don't remove it. I mean, is there a downside to removing it?
I think
That's what
it will
don't
be the
understand.
same. I think it will be-
Our intent is not to allow any expansion of what's been happening in the past. So what's the downside to removing it?
I think it would be the same policy implications whether we kept it or removed it.
And Brian, maybe this is a good one for you to kind of chime in on is, you know, by including it, basically we're stating what's happening today and trying to alleviate that from happening any further. Can you kind of talk through the two differences between including it as a recognized definition and/or just omitting it?
If you include the definition and then specify in the non-conforming use regulations that a specialty marina cannot be expanded, that's the clearest statement of your policy choice. If you take the definition out, then you're going to then look at the regulations of the zoning ordinance generally when it comes to non-conforming uses. When can they be expanded? When can't they be expanded? And so without doing a detailed analysis of the non-conforming use regulations, the question, I think, becomes less clear.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Isn't
Any other
non-conforming already considered like you can't do anything with it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Expanded or.
right, so I feel like
Yep.
it covers it.
It's not in the use tables anywhere, right?
right,
Or in the district definitions. It's not-
Right.
Right.
right. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, two things. First of all, the non-conforming section, quite frankly, I didn't review it because it wasn't up for discussion tonight. I think that's, Section 5 or Section 6, one of those things. So, you know, would like to think about this in relation to how it's referenced and used in that section, which we don't have in front of us tonight. That being said, I read this, and in reading this, I was confused. I mean, I was saying, what does this really mean? To me, it looked like that it was opening up a lot of situations that could be confusing, and you could probably drive a truck through some of the openings of it. And I was thinking that we hadn't said it already, that why do we have this in here? I mean, I would at this point, without knowing the context, again, just looking at this by itself, it seems to me, I read it about 3 times, I was confused 3 times of exactly what this really means, and when I get confused that much, it's probably better to take it out.
Any other feedback on that?
I too am challenged by the definition, and to your point, non-conforming is 7, and so we're not, reviewing it here today in front of us. I feel that it should come out, and if we need to make some comments in 7, that we include them there. Because I do think this will open a can of worms.
My feedback is kind of aligned with Brian, to be honest with you. I guess I've seen several of these, and we've had this conversation amongst the commission several times, some of us, in trying to define and pinpoint exactly what was going on. And I think that, to Brian's case and just my experience in running into this, it feels like identifying and putting it on paper and then correlating it to the non-conforming section. I agree with Brian in terms of it reinforcing our position and being very specific about that. If we don't have it listed, I fear this is just maybe a point of clarity for Brian. Is it something that could come up in the future of a use that we do not define as to apply it to our general standards, to where then it goes to ZBA for an interpretation, and we're kind of doing this circle again, because we haven't clearly said that we're not allowing these things. By having it defined, I think it gives us better grounds to say no up front on the long term. And that's just my feeling. I'd rather have us have a position, especially it being linked to the nonconformity. I feel like that will position us well if challenged in the future for a new one coming in, because we're blatantly stating and correlating it to something that we don't want to see happening. The goal of this is to really define like what's going on out there and to leave ambiguity out of it. So I think this is a good place to start. But Brian, is that kind of where you were going with your opinion on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to be very clear as to what the township's intentions were.
Maybe, it's, I'm not saying that you don't need to have a definition. I think when we get to that discussion around the nonconformity and what we're agreeing upon, then we come back to a definition of what that discussion is. It feels like to me, we kind of got in this case, the cart before the horse. And I understand that we should define what we mean, but at the same time, when I see some of this thing, it just seemed to me that it was opening ourselves up to some problems down the road, especially when we say that it is an accessory to a non-conforming cabin court. Well, I can see whole debates over what we mean by accessory. It's just word by word. So I know that we know what the spirit should be, so therefore let's try and find out 7 what we come to, and then maybe come back to redefine this. But at this point, the way this is written, it seems to me that it's too broad.
Well, maybe this is one that we can, Brian, maybe we can put a note on this, kind of talk through it at a later date. We've got a lot of things to get to as well outside of this. Unless there's other comments or feedback that we want to kind of keep going on this, because I think we could go down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
That's fine. I mean,
Okay.
otherwise.
So let's just take note of this, and maybe we can craft or look at some additional ways to clean up that definition, to take some of the ambiguity out of it. And maybe we revisit that when we come back to review of section 7. I think that's our nonconformities. Is that a game plan?
That'll be May 21st.
May 21st? Okay.
Claire, in your opinion, would that be appropriate?
I think that would be a reasonable approach. I think another approach would be to remove the definition for now, and then if we, when we're working through the nonconformity, if we feel that the cabin courts are a unique enough use that is nonconforming, that we want to put it back in there, then we have this draft ordinance, or we have this draft definition to use. But we have a lot of nonconforming uses, structures throughout the township, and so we're certainly not going to be defining and addressing all of them in the nonconformity section. So I think it would be reasonable to remove it for now, and then if we find as we're working through the nonconformity, we could put it back in. That'd be my recommendation.
Yep, go ahead, Mindy.
This non-conforming use, this specific use is only related to cabin courts, correct?
Yes.
What about on the bay? Because this one only suggests it's on inland lakes or streams. It does not include the bay.
Right. Yeah, so the term specialty marina, it could have been another term that didn't have the word marina, but it's basically a cabin court that has historically rented boats to the guests of the cabin court, is the way that.
I think the word marina itself is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think maybe accessory use to a cabin court might be where we might want to go with it. Because we do know that these are for the guests only. We do know that historically, a lot of times they were rowboats or fishing boats or smaller, those types of boats. And I'm concerned that the term marina is the wrong term.
But there's nothing that says we have to keep the word marina in there. I mean, that was just the term that was briefly discussed. You can call it a cabin port boat rental. You could call it a whole bunch of things. It really doesn't matter what the label is. As long as you make it clear, whatever the term is, you make it clear in the non-conforming use article that you're not allowing expansions. But there's nothing magical about the term marina in that term. You can always label it something different.
I would support that. I do think it kind of, I mean, let's face it, when we hear the word marina, we think, lots of boats and.
The thing is too, it says marina, comma, specialty, and we have a definition of marina. And then if you look at roads, there's roads, comma, local, roads, comma, highway, roads, comma, this, roads, comma, that. So that links them all together. And I don't think that what the cabin court is the same as the marina that I see when I.
Right.
Read that term.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Well, that and the fact that we're calling it a facility, where it's more a service or,
Right.
a service of the cabin court. Facility puts in my mind some type of a structure, something of that nature. And as far as marina is concerned, I got questions on that one too, so I'm just sticking on this one.
Okay, well, I'll just say that I think that putting it with 7 makes sense. I would like to just highlight it for discussion when we do 7, but I think for our team here, I think we should consider changing it as a definition in some way so that we get the word marina out of it.
I support removing it and then looking at 7 and seeing where we need to maybe beef up some of the language around the cabin courts and non-conforming use and inability to expand.
Yep, put it on the back burner.
Back burner.
Can we just use that term collectively, back burner? Parking lot? Parking lot?
We'll remove it from the ordinance for now, but we've got a definition. We can always change the name, and we can revisit it during the nonconformity discussion.
We all comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am not comfortable with taking it out altogether, but we'll revisit it May 21st.
Okay, thank you.
There's one.
That is one, yep, one of five. The other ones,
Keep going.
I think will be a little bit shorter. So I just wanted to bring this up, and we don't have to make the Planning Commission doesn't have to make a determination today, but it is, we have a current AFC, adult foster care home, that's operated in the township in the low-density district. They're interested in transitioning to a structured day program, which it sounds like there's more, there may be increasing demand for these. So it would operate, I think, similar intensity to what we see at an adult foster care facility. However, they're not licensed as adult foster care facilities. They're licensed as structured day program. And so the patients would come for the day. So it's basically operated Monday through Friday, like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they have, medical transport and other types of services. So I just wanted to see if the planning, have that be awareness of the Planning Commission. And I think that it would be reasonable to consider allowing these structured day programs in the same districts and uses as where we allow adult foster care facilities. Any initial thoughts on that?
Seems reasonable.
Yes.
Okay.
Mindy, go ahead.
We should include that.
What do you think, Mindy?
It's a population difference.
The population difference, so they are similarly where they would do up to 6, or they would do 6 to 12. So they would be, I think the way our requirements would be regulated would be, we would allow the same number of population based on the district that they were permitted, whether it was special land use or, so it would mirror our adult foster care use.
I think collectively you guys support.
Okay, that sounds good. The next one I did want to highlight was the billboards, and we had public comment tonight about that. We did receive a special land use permit application for a new billboard. Basically, they're looking to move the existing billboard. It's currently located on Pirates Cove property, so just a few feet away, but it's to another parcel. So I took a look at it and said, from a distance perspective, setbacks, everything was met in terms of locating a billboard there, met our ordinance requirements. However, the size of billboard that was, that they are proposing is significantly larger than what we allow. So we allow 75 square foot billboard in the regional business district because all of the regional business district is 45 miles per hour. So I think I would like to just have policy discussion and get some input from the Planning Commission. We have traditionally allowed 75 feet, or 75 square feet for a billboard, dating back, at least a decade. And in the current draft ordinance, also looking at limiting it to 75 square feet. But wondering, our existing billboards are a little less than 300 square feet, so they're significantly larger, and just wanted to see the Planning Commission's thought on.
How many do we have? Is there 3?
3, yep. We have one near Burger King, one near 3 Mile, and then this one.
Burger King's No, it's not. It's not, though.
So we have 3.
Just wonder, we're going through this whole process with the East Bay District visioning session. I'd be hesitant to make a determination on this before we have results from those surveys, before we have public input, before we have people's feedback about what that corridor is supposed to look like. That's my opinion. I wouldn't want to change anything, certainly, until I hear what the public says.
Fair.
I think that's fair.
I agree with that.
Fair. They're moving a parcel, but only a few feet. I mean, I go back to construction code. As soon as you touch something or move it, you now have to update it to that current code. So it's
Right.
like if our current code says it's 75 It just, from the past, it's just, that's how it is. Now, if they were keeping it there and they just wanted to upgrade it to a digital sign, or I don't know if it is or not, but fine. But now that you're literally moving the sign, you're changing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea of
But I mean,
let's get some
I agree
additional
with
feedback.
the vision thing.
Yeah.
Well, we will make sure that there is some included in the charrette, some kind of input, visual feedback on signs and messaging as a part of that, and we'll keep it at the 75 for now and revisit that. Okay, next one I wanted to just highlight is in the agricultural zoning district. Right now, and we reviewed this at our last work session, all of the districts and uses permitted, but right now, we do not allow places of public assembly in the agricultural district. So our current zoning ordinance, we do allow places of public assembly, which would include churches. In our draft ordinance, we are not permitting places of public assembly. So the implication of that is we have a number of churches throughout our agricultural district that would become legal nonconforming. We had one church that just got in touch, approached the township this week with an interest in expanding. They would not be permitted to expand. So I did just want to bring that to the Planning Commission's attention, that change will have implications for places of public assembly gathering in the agricultural district specifically, I think is.
Why did we choose to make that change?
That's a good question, and Paul and Carl might be able to speak to it. We had a lot of discussion about whether or not, places of public assembly were appropriate within the urban growth boundary versus outside of the urban growth boundary. And so, there's environmentally sensitive areas outside of the urban growth boundary, and then there's agricultural district, which to me is a little bit different. But I think the policy recommendation of the subcommittee was to limit places of public assembly to the urban growth boundary with water and sewer. So I did want to just bring that up because it could have potentially negative impacts from.
I think we had, as a planning commission at the time, we had recently had some wedding venues.
We had a wedding venue.
barns,
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Proposed. Now, it wasn't in the agricultural district, that was residential, but I think that was top of mind. I guess in my opinion, I would think we would want to allow the church to expand there. That's my personal opinion. But I don't know if we can.
Can you add an exemption?
I don't know if you can you do that?
Places of
You can't
No,
do that
you
legally,
can't.
right?
From my understanding, we can't regulate churches differently than places of public assembly, so it's gathering places.
My fear is if we remove it altogether, think of, I think of a lot of these farms that are kind of diversifying what they do and trying to add value to their property, especially in a farmer's market setup or, a cidery or something along those lines. I would think that'd be something we'd want to still allow because we're really restricting what those people can do with their land at the end of the day.
We're doing
do allow for
agribusiness.
Agribusiness would
Yeah.
fall under that.
We're having that, yeah. That's a lot.
To dive into
This
that
would be
further.
assembly versus a business. The
Well,
differentiation.
the place of public assembly is generally, is often a commercial operation.
Oh, okay.
And so it could be a wedding, it could be a church, it could be an auditorium. It's, a number of different uses that could fall into that.
It's basically a standalone, is how we're looking at it.
And how many of our 10 churches fall in agricultural?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at a count. I know there's several churches in the agricultural district. Some of them are smaller.
That is a tricky one, because because now, the church started off small because of funds, and that's all they could afford, and now they're expanding and are limited. It's, number one, either going to force them to leave, or, I mean, start over again, and that doesn't seem like a viable option. But,
Sort of rendering to Caesar.
huh?
I said it's sort of rendering to Caesar.
Yeah. I don't know, that's tricky.
Is there a way to describe the use so that it, like the exclusionary zoning to describe it, the public assembly could only happen on Sundays?
No, because then the Saturday
Whoa,
churches would not be happy
no,
about that.
Don't go there.
I'm just, the other thing with the agribusiness, if you look, I'm thinking of what's happening kind of west of Traverse City with some of the farm businesses.
That's what I was thinking
They're
of.
growing beyond just like a farm stand. There's concerts, there's,
Jacob's Farm.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know if they've had complaints or from the neighbors or anything like that, but they certainly are growing into a much more diversified commercial business.
Sure. Sure. I get a little
Exemption of existing places, assemblies.
Grandfather?
Yeah.
Like,
They wouldn't be able to be expanded.
Oh.
So if they were not permitted, then.
I need another computer so I can go to this quicker.
So if somebody, I mean, here's my thing, I mean, if they bought this huge acreage and built this, whatever, church, whatever building, and with the intentions of
I'm there.
expanding, which is very, very common, I mean, we are literally going to be stifling their future plans and maybe why they bought a particular property. So I don't know that that seems right either.
So maybe that's one that we could get an inventory of what's going on, at least with the existing uses, to see what's out there on the ground. I think that would be a good point of reference for us to have feedback on.
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
And maybe, unless anybody can think of other elements that could be tied in, maybe we could also just, only because I didn't look through the agribusiness thing directly, it'd be a good refresher to apply that, because as it's top of mind, I'm just trying to think, like, how do you allow, but maybe not go crazy? Because you're right, that is one that popped into my head, but I think of Peninsula Township and many of their, farms that have grown and shifted what they're doing, but there's also kind of a balance there, like tying it back to the farm and what your primary use is there. Concerts, we're getting out there a little bit.
Back to the places of public assembly.
So maybe a little more research on that one.
Sounds good.
Be helpful.
Okay, so the last one was the daycare centers, and there's a few public comments on that. We received some correspondence. So right now, the way that we have drafted section, so if you'll recall, when we were working to remove barriers to daycare, we were basically just looking at the districts that were permitting childcare centers, the group homes, group daycare homes. However, we weren't looking specifically at the standards. We said that we were going to revisit the standards in more detail when we went through the zoning ordinance rewrite. So the draft zoning ordinance rewrite that we have is basically the standards have carried over from our existing zoning ordinance, subcommittee didn't get a chance to really dive into those changing those standards in great detail. I do think that deferring back to the state makes sense from a licensing perspective, unless there's a really compelling, public safety, welfare reason that we are adding additional requirements. I did look at some of our neighbors. I looked at Garfield, I looked at Acme, I looked at Traverse City. Those units of government do not have any standards besides so Acme and Traverse City both do not have standards beside what the state requires. I saw that Garfield does require a 4-foot fence, but I think the requirement for a 6-foot fence is kind of above and beyond what what is reasonable for a daycare. And also just kind of going back to the purpose behind, right now in our ordinance, we require a fence if it's adjacent to another residence. And so, I guess my question would be a 6-foot fence versus a 4-foot fence, is that keeping in noise? What is that? What is the difference in the purpose or value that that's providing? So my recommendation would be to stick to the state licensing standards unless we have, a real compelling reason to have additional standards in place.
I agree.
I agree.
So-
Looking at Shanisha's letter, I mean, she got a quote at $16,000.
So basically, under Section 417, daycare center or childcare centers, item 3, where we are actually discussing the size of the fence, all outdoor areas used for the care and supervision shall have appropriate fencing, consisting of a minimum 6-foot-high privacy fence along the area adjoining another residence, and a minimum 4-foot-high fence. So that's going to come out, and we're going to put that into the state standards, just for the record.
I just think the last thing we want to do is discourage people from opening a center. It's like it was stated, I mean, there is not enough daycare. There's just not. And so if we're going to make it even tougher, let's let the state, who's already got their guidelines set in place, regulate that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Are we going to revisit this section?
Well, I think,
This is part of today's discussion.
All right, then fine. Then my other question on this, is there anything in here that we want to have specifying distance between such centers?
We took it out, so we previously, I believe, had a 1,500-foot requirement for distance separation. I did have some instances where I had, a neighbor that was interested in opening a daycare. They were within that distance from, I believe it was Center Ice, and so that does seem to provide some, additional barriers. So that was in the previous version of the ordinance, and in this draft has been removed.
Okay, that's fine. I just was checking.
But again, it's certainly be discussed.
No, that's fine.
I'll just remind everybody that 6-foot fence went in because of neighbor complaints around daycare centers.
Was it that they could see or they could hear? Do you remember what the complaints were?
Both.
Both?
Right, so when you have daycare centers, you often have an outside play area, and, there's lots of little tykes, this and that and the other things, and it's just the cleaning up of the areas that people didn't like, in addition to the noise. So that's why the 6-foot, and it was a privacy and not just a chain link, is to, make it so that the neighbors aren't seeing anything. I don't have a problem taking it, I just want to remind people that that was the history of that 6-foot fence requirement that is more than what the state requires.
Would there be an opportunity to make that fencing, the 4-foot fence that the state requires, make it opaque on the side of, another residence?
I don't think 4 foot's going to be enough.
No, to make it opaque so they can't see through it, so you can put those little tiny plastic
I know, but
slats
it's
through
not,
to hide.
it's not,
But, I mean,
yeah, you're going to see right over it.
But
I mean,
just trying to help.
my
with-
neighbors have a 4-foot fence all the way around theirs, but their property slopes down. I can see their entire backyard.
I'm just
So it's
trying
not going to
help
change, yeah.
With some of the complaints of before, but it
Yeah.
sounds like that wouldn't even meet the need.
It wouldn't alleviate
Okay.
the questions or the comments of the residents that are near these.
Okay, that's
Because
fair.
they are many times in residential neighborhoods.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, I can appreciate that, I really can, so not to be insensitive to that, but the kids are not outside all day long, and probably hardly at all at winter.
Well, and most of the complaints are actually not the centers, but just the homes. where
Right.
You've got the kids,
Right.
you know, and that's where the complaints are the neighbors.
I have neighbors with lots of little kids. I don't have little kids anymore, so, but, you know, I mean, how do you control that?
Yeah, I know a lot of 2-year-olds that have got an arm, and it'll go over a 6-foot fence or a 10-foot
Yeah.
fence. So it doesn't matter
And
what.
so will their voices.
So will their voices. So I think it is what it is.
It's going over.
So
Yeah.
just for clarification, we have this 6-foot fence requirement in the child care home group facilities and in the daycare center or child care center. So that would be, it would be, based on this discussion, it would be removed from both of those.
I mean, does the state regulate a group home versus
They
differently?
do, my understand, and we've got experts that can speak to that probably in,
Well,
more
again, if-
articulately, but my understanding is that the centers require fencing, like a 4-foot fence.
Well, if we're going to stick with the state standards, then that would still be required.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we would defer to state standards for both of those.
Right?
I like it.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that is all that I had for the extra topics that came up. And then we've got Andy has joined us from Giffords Webster, patiently waiting. And I did want to just, there's a couple items that were promised to follow up on from our last discussion. The first one, the seasonal docks on Lake Michigan. So I did get in touch with Eagle and Army Corps. Eagle does not regulate seasonal docks, like residences that have docks on Lake Michigan. Army Corps does, so all of those are permitted by Army Corps. They get a one-time permit and continue to put them in and out each year. I asked Army Corps if they require any type of a setback requirement. They do, so they would generally require that a dock is offset from a property line, although there are certain instances, just, I think some of the, you know, like Lake St. Clair and different areas of the state where they have, you know, where they would have a adjacent property sign permission for it to be, you know, right on the property line. So based on my conversation with them, I don't think there's a reason for us to have additional regulations on setback for.
Hold on.
Paul is a-
Hold on.
Paul is a- so, go ahead.
I realize that there's differences between the inland lakes and the East Bay. I still think that something needs to be put in there that prevents people from just willy-nilly putting it on the property line, albeit you do have the Army Corps of Engineers. However, you did check with Eagle. Eagle said, no, nothing. However, in our ordinance, the write-up, it says docks may be permitted if permitted by Eagle. So if we're going back and permitting by Eagle, and Eagle doesn't care, that means we have nothing.
We're going to take that out.
So my suggestion
flip
is
those
that if you're going to do it, you switch that to Army Corps of Engineers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right? And then you got it covered in some way.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and the permanent docks are permitted through Eagle and Army Corps.
Well, we're not worrying about the permanent. We're talking more about the neighbors putting their docks.
Okay, but what section are you looking at?
I'm looking at section, well, it'd be under riparian setbacks, which would be 3.8B, and that would come all the way down to C,
Okay, under East Grand Traverse.
on East Grand Traverse Bay setback. You see where it says permitted by Eagle, but then you said Eagle doesn't do anything, so therefore you have nothing.
Yeah, that sounds good, we can make that change.
I hope that's all that you have for those docks. Brian doesn't want to lose any more extremities for talking about docks in Grand Traverse County.
Well, I do have on the definition, but that was my only thing. I realize that we are limited in what we can do, but When we said no eagle, and then we're saying it's eagles, that means you have nothing. So if you put in Army Corps of Engineers, you got something.
Good catch, Paul.
Okay.
That sounds good. The next
Claire?
one?
Claire,
Did you have something, Brian?
Brian.
is there anything else for me?
Appreciate you joining us. I think we're all set.
I don't want to spend the township's money as long as I don't have to.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. So the next is impervious surface. At the last Planning Commission work session, it was brought up, so in the current zoning ordinance and in the draft zoning ordinance, we limit impervious surface in our environmentally sensitive areas to 20% of the total site. And so that's currently what we require in the lakes area. In our new draft ordinance, we're moving that forward into all environmentally sensitive areas. The question was, what about, should we be limiting impervious surface in other districts throughout the township? Especially, I think a case can be made in particular for sites that do not require a stormwater permit. So a lot of our sites are commercial, are industrial, multifamily. Those all have stormwater permits. They're treating all of their water on site. However, as we're looking at increasing density in some of our residential districts, we could be looking at less impervious surface. So the Watershed Center helped do some research and collect some existing regulations of other neighboring communities. Also looked at Traverse City requirements for impervious surface. Also discussed with the township engineer, Wade Trim, about an appropriate percentage from a stormwater perspective. So we came up with a 45%, seemed like a reasonable requirement for residential homes in non-environmental sensitive areas. So that would be, the Planning Commission, you can certainly not have an impervious surface requirement, but I think if you are looking to have a requirement on other parcels, kind of in that 45% range would be the staff recommendation.
Just thinking that through, did you have more
Oh, I
tied to
had
that?
just one other thing. There's this sheet on your paper with a highlighted definition. We do not have a definition of impervious in our current zoning ordinance, and the stormwater definition of impervious leaves a little bit to be desired. So Wade Trim is proposing this definition to be added to the zoning ordinance and then also updated in our stormwater ordinance so that we have a consistent definition for both.
Is this something that would align with the county by chance
Well, the county doesn't regulate stormwater.
on individuals?
Right, so we have the township has a stormwater ordinance. So it took, the township took it over from the county. So this would align with the township stormwater ordinance and requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So just so I understand it right, we would basically be saying that a home could not have more than 45%, and that includes their roof?
Yes,
Okay.
unless it's a green roof, or, unless it's.
Growing things?
Well, according to the definition, that would.
That doesn't count?
No,
Darn it.
moss does not count.
Okay, well, yeah. All right,
According to this definition, I think that a green roof would still be considered an impervious surface because it requires continued maintenance.
We are also in the process of revisiting our stormwater ordinance and looking at green infrastructure and maintenance, and so we would be addressing that, but that would be a question to take a look at if we did have a green roof proposed.
Was that
So do
40?
we need to add it?
I think that's a larger conversation just about
Okay.
maintenance agreements as a part of stormwater permits.
Okay.
So as a part of that analysis, did they kind of do an aerial inventory of a certain percentage of the community? Or where did that, where?
45%.
Yeah, where did that 45% kind of come
45%
from?
was based on guidance from the Watershed Center, looking at other communities, looking at Traverse City and what they're requiring in similar districts of kind of the lower intensity, as well as kind of knowing the soil type in the township, and also looking at kind of our existing development patterns and seeing, there's very few parcels currently that exist that would be anywhere near that 45%. Even in the lakes area, it's rare that we run into a parcel that's, even though the lakes, a lot of those parcels seem like they're very built out and that they're, they have a lot on a singular parcel, it is rare that we find one that hits that 20% mark.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of folks here that have sensitive areas around them, and not everybody got our correspondence, I don't think, but thank you for the explanation, it's helpful. Lot width?
Yeah, so the lot width, I'm going to turn that over to Andy, but I will just, I guess we're revisiting the appropriate lot width for the low-density residential district, and because we had 3 planning commissioners absent last month, and this would be a big change for the township. Our current lot width minimum is 100 feet, so this would be a pretty substantial change in our low-density district. But based on the density that we're increasing to, the 5 dwelling units per acre in the low-density residential district, Giffords Webster, their analysis was that the 47 feet meets the 1-to-4 ratio for a land division and that density requirement. So that was their recommendation. The Planning Commission spent quite a bit of time, deliberation, discussing that. We decided to table it and come back to it today. So, Andy, I'll turn that over to you.
Great. Good evening, Planning Commission. Thanks for having me on again at today's meeting. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. I just have a quick, brief presentation. It's nothing like last meetings, and I know we're already at almost 8 o'clock, so I want to be brief here. Can you see this screen?
Yep. Looks good, Andy.
Okay, great. So first things first, again, we're just talking about Article 2 and Article 4 mostly, but I do want to quickly revisit a summary of last week's discussion as well. Obviously, for those that weren't here last week, the subcommittee handed the Planning Commission this drafted ordinance over to you, and these workshops are to visit all of the topics and subjects and major changes that were made. So just recapping the previous workshop, I'll get to exactly what Claire mentioned about the lot width. It wasn't sequenced that way in my presentation, so I'm sorry. We revised Article 1. There were some concerns there about just some weird word choice. I think we can all agree that was a little odd, that we have straightened out. And then we also carried the dimensional requirements of HDR over to MHC. We added that the affordable housing component be required as part of any density bonuses. So it's got to have an affordability component. Then you look into those other options as well to implement. We added language about the restoration, replanting, and renewing of the vegetative buffer when work is proposed, essentially. We removed the flagged wetland reference so that now wetlands are only regulated as when they're the state identified wetlands. And we also clarified that existing public parks don't qualify as open space as part of a residential cluster development. And we removed the restriction of the maximum of 1 auto repair shop in an industrial park. So moving over to the lot width discussion. So Claire and I have briefly discussed, as well as we've kind of taken a look at some of the existing plats in the township. So I just pulled one random example from Pine Grove that just seemed to make sense from a really, I guess, implementation standpoint and practicality standpoint. So here I highlighted two existing parcels of land, lots of record that currently exist. As you see here, the thicker black line, but all highlighted in blue. So right here, you'll see that this is one lot and this is one lot. They're currently rather large lots. They have 100 feet of frontage of width and then 165 feet of depth. They're actually platted in the original plat as 4 separate lots. So looking at this, Claire and I just wanted to ask you, how would you feel about just allowing original platted lots to be allowed in the event that an owner wanted to implement them that way? That way, you would be able to reuse these 2 lots as a resultant 4 lots following the original plat, which has the 50 by 165. That does actually amount a little smaller than what we currently propose in total lot area, but we would increase the lot width to that 50-foot requirement. So it brings it down to about 8250 as a total lot size. But again, a lot of these are platted that way, and my experience from the Land Division Act is that you can generally follow the original plat's lot lines. That's not a plat amendment in my experience. So it's actually county equalization, whoever the bodies are that review the kind of the easy lot splits and combos based on not amending a plat. So Claire and I wanted to just visit this with you, see how you feel about, looking at where our existing plats are and how lots were originally drawn up. Does it make sense to just go back to that time in 1950 when the lot was platted and say, let's follow these original plat lots? So I'd just like to open up discussion on that before I move further into the presentation. Claire, is that okay?
Yeah, yep, that sounds good. And this would be for all of low-density residential districts, so which is a large chunk throughout the township, but this is the kind of higher density area that we have that's zoned low density.
So it's not just for the platted subdivisions, but any new thing would also be the 50-foot lot minimum.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, it would be new or existing subdivisions. Yep.
To me, one of the things that I guess I like about this adjustment is that, in theory, if we're going to be adding density, it doesn't have to consume the entirety of the property to get those splits, if you will, implemented. What we see a lot of times are these, like, take a 40, split it up 8 ways, and you put a road down the middle. You've got these, 5-acre chunks that go throughout the entirety of it, and people might take care of a small chunk of that and leave the rest, which is fine. But to me, doing something like that, if I was in the shoes of a developer, it's almost like, how can I maximize the splits without taking up all the lands? It may provide a little more flexibility for what we'd see come through. That's just my thought in having a look at that, because they could do some smaller ones mixed in with some larger ones, rather than just chewing up all of, 100 feet of frontage every single time. But that's just my feedback.
I agree with that. I like the idea that you can have flexibility there. I'm trying to imagine in my mind what's the downside. Is the downside that you get something that just looks out of character for low density, like if it were...
Right.
guess, in my opinion, I think I'm in favor of it because I think it allows some flexibility and so.
My thing about taking the Pine Grove example there is that way back when, they were obviously all 50-foot lots. Somebody wanted to have a large lot, so they bought it. So, I mean, to then show it as 50 feet, I don't know. I mean, I just, 50-foot minimum width is probably okay. It's going to give more flexibility out there. But I just, in planning ourselves out, you look down the road and say, do you want East Bay Township within certain parts to be nothing more than Pine Grove Township? Yeah.
Well, I think they're still going to maximize the development potential of whatever that density is. So they're either going to chew it all up because they have to, or potentially consolidate it. And maybe, Andy, I'm just brainstorming here out loud, but is there another section where we can look to maybe like an added density bonus if they were to preserve a certain portion of the land? Like, is that something that we've got built in somewhere else?
Yeah, we do.
We have the residential clusters, but it's very similar to what your existing ordinance is. I don't think we got I don't think we changed any directions really there. So it does those type of cluster subdivisions have flexibility when you preserve space, yes.
Yeah.
And I would say with our density increase, it's going to open up a lot more flexibility for the residential cluster, just because you can develop at a higher density while preserving open space throughout.
So I'm the one that wants it not all the way back to 100, but I was looking at the subdivision regulations back from old school, and I didn't like the 47 because I didn't like the 47 number. We decided that we liked those end in zeros or fives.
I agree with that. I don't even know why. I just don't like the number either. It's a weird number.
And the subdivision standard back in the day said 65. And so we went and talked a little bit differences. I think, in my opinion, in the low density, I think 50 is too small. I was thinking, 65, 75. Stephen pushed back on me a little bit, and I think we came in the 60, 55, 60, pushing it out more than this. I'm fine with it in all the other zoning districts, but the 50 to me in residential just seems
Tight.
too tight. Low-density residential, I understand the math, I understand where they got the 47 from, but then when I think about, the developments and them coming in as a site condo or a PUD, they're going to figure it out the way that they need to anyway, so this is really only affecting those which can be, those lots in subdivisions that are already existing as much. I would like to actually kind of, that map that you have, I don't like what's going on the other side of the street where you've got 75-foot lots, really, off of Tamarack. I think this is going to make it really messy, could potentially make it really messy in Pine Grove. But I kind of would like to see that we put it in the zoning ordinance that it's 65 feet or to the original plat, whichever.
Is less?
No, because everything would go to the, well, unless it's not platted.
Right. But we don't know what's platted, right? We'd have to go do research.
We know.
We have
You
every
know.
plat.
Right, but we don't have it in front of us.
Right.
Because if we went to the 65-foot, and let's say somebody owned that extra lot next to them and wanted to sell it, then they couldn't even do that, right? Because it would know, or did they make those one, did they already combine those?
Yeah, those are combined.
Those
That's
are
what that-
combined.
that's
Yeah,
what that-
so they're one parcel now.
Yeah, and
So they would not be able to split it.
Right. So the other option that we could discuss that we haven't yet, because we, our original, when we started the zoning ordinance rewrite, the premise was that we weren't going to be rezoning large portions of the property, or of the township. The Pine Grove neighborhood, as well as a neighborhood right near the airport, like the Amy and George Street neighborhood, those are both identified on our future land use map as, I believe, medium to high density. So those are identified as a district that could be rezoned. I think, our intention was not to rezone property as a part of this process, but it would be supported in our future land use map, so that would be another option to discuss.
So you're saying not taking a broad stroke across the low-density residential areas,
Yeah, if you look
but
at,
just applying it to Pine Grove and the sub near the airport? You said Amy Street?
we could potentially, apply our moderate density regulations to those two subdivisions. My concern with rezoning those is that it opens up multifamily development in both those neighborhoods, and they've been traditionally developed as single-family detached homes. So I think they are more appropriate, just from like a housing type, to be kept in the low-density district. But that's part of the reason we were looking to do the smaller lot width, to allow for more flexibility, so that, some of those parcels could be split if a
Right.
owner decided or desired to. I don't think you're going to see a lot of them, because I think, in a lot of them, the house is right in the center of the lot.
Yeah.
So there's going to be very few instances where that.
You wouldn't
that would
even be
come
able
to
to, yeah.
fruition, but it would at least give them the opportunity.
Right. I'm thinking of some housing products that are out right now, where I've seen some newer ones, like in the Muskegon. I'm thinking of a different community altogether, but residential district in Muskegon, they are having a lot of success with attracting people to the area and younger families and just smaller lots in general. They're building like stacked duplexes that are 28 foot wide. And so 28 foot wide, let's just call it 30, you got 10 on either side, there's your 50 foot setback, or your 50 foot lot width. Not to say that you couldn't do it on a bigger one, but they exist in places that are more similar to that, not out in what I think of when I'm thinking of where all the low density exists, which is the majority of the growth boundary. I don't know, I'm just, in my head, I'm still stuck on that flexibility thing and providing a little bit more.
But if you're
But-
going from 100 to 65,
That's
that's
a lot.
a lot anyway.
How do you feel about 60?
How do you feel about 62.5?
How about 57?
No.
Where was the background and the back and forth between you guys in terms
I think it's
of,
bad, like, I get the flexibility thing, but I also get, I get hung up on it's low density. We can shrink it down for the medium and high, but the low density, let's kind of keep it somewhat low density.
What are like the lot widths, say, in English Woods?
What are we?
Like 75?
We're like a half an acre almost, like 0.47. They're long and narrow, so, and you'd think I would know that off the top of my head, but,
Well, mine's like 0.3 acres.
yeah.
But width-wise,
I feel like we're
Width-wise.
pretty close to 100.
It's less than 100,
less than 100?
because as Claire said when we were doing the subdivide behind us, ours don't meet.
I want to say 100. And quite frankly, the majority, well, everybody built in the middle of their lots, so there's no splitting a lot in there.
I guess I'm fine with 50, I'm fine with 60. 5, whatever. I do like the idea, I mean, I guess I can imagine a scenario where part of this low-density residential that encompasses the bulk of our urban growth, the land within our urban growth boundary, where you would have a few, maybe things like what Dan was talking about, where you have stacked duplexes, but then you would also have some larger, areas, home development. I guess I think that's aesthetically pleasing, and it also offers a range of housing options in a place we're trying to attract people that would be close to employment centers and things like that. That's why I favor it. But I think that could be accomplished at 65 too.
I think we're still taking a huge jump down
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
from 100 to 65. I really do, and then leaving the 50 at the other zoning districts. I'm fine
Areas.
with that. It's just the low-density one, I don't,
Yeah,
I can support 65.
What do you think, Renee? It's up to you.
65 is great. Yeah. I just like the direction it's going.
Yeah, it is a
Because
big
we have to be proactive about being able to bring, more housing and so.
If we do go with 65, are we impacting these platted things to the point where they are, so in the case of that lot,
We couldn't split.
they couldn't split? Okay.
Your minimum lot would
Yeah,
have to be
they,
130.
that's what I was saying. Even if they built within the 50-foot, they won't be able to split it.
With 65.
Yeah.
They would technically be able to split this chunk of 2 into 3. So I mean, you would be able to get, a formerly, you want to get the 4, but you would have 200 feet of total width, so you could end up getting 3 lots out of it. So you would.
Are those currently vacant?
Andy, wouldn't we not be able to do a split
no house?
if it's not on the original plat line?
Because that doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, honestly, I don't really know what the language is of a split within a subdivision. Off the top of my head, I would need to research that. I think, yeah, going back to the original lot lines is just the smoothest way to do it, but,
Yeah.
you might be right, Claire. Good point. We can look at that.
Can't make everybody happy.
Right.
I think yours is 100.
What is Pine Grove currently? I keep looking at that. Is that yellow or is that
I'm just looking at one near you.
Low-density residential.
yellow? Okay, because
But it's identified on the future land use map as a higher density than the rest of the low-density district. So in the future, on a case-by-case basis, parcels in Pine Grove could come and apply for rezoning because that's supported in the future land use map as a potential.
Yeah, I think I'm on Renee's bandwagon now. It's a step in the right direction without going too far, maybe.
so you're saying you want to make Pine Grove even more dense?
Compromise.
Right.
Okay, I'm just asking.
So if we go 65, there's really no chance with like that example there that they could split those lots. Originally platted at 50 foot, the example that Andy gave, you've got 4. If it's originally platted at 50, they couldn't divide that at 65. So essentially, it sounds like we wouldn't be changing the aesthetic of the Pine Grove neighborhood, correct? Is that fair? Okay.
Based on, with a 65-foot lot width. Yeah, there would be, with our change to the proposed changes, it allows some flexibility, like infill. So you could potentially put a duplex on a parcel that's up to 11,000 square feet. So
Okay.
it does allow for some different types of housing options depending on the size of the parcel.
I'm not going to worry
And
about those 3.
I guess
because
one-
there's houses there. And they take up the entire lot.
Go ahead, Andy.
Just one point too, 65 would make a lot like this, so if you can see my mouse, it would make this conforming again, as long as it meets the minimum lot size. So 65 is a good point for things like that. So this right now, I think at 75 of total width would probably be legal non-conforming right now, I would assume. So 65 would actually bring this back into the picture as a legal conforming lot.
Mindy's helping people out.
See, I love that forward thinking.
Yeah, I think 65 is appropriate.
Feeling okay? All right, let's go with it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I think that's all that we had from the.
And then,
Oh,
just
sorry.
if I may ask, keep the lot area? Oh,
What was that?
Andy, was your question to keep the lot area?
yeah, was it keep it at the 8650? 8750, I'm sorry.
That's based on the density we're permitting in that district.
Which is
Oh.
a quarter acre.
A fifth of, more like a fifth of an acre.
Fifth?
Yeah, it puts you at exactly a fifth of an acre.
Fifth?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think so.
So you're moving low density to 65, which would be the same then for moderate density?
No, I thought we were leaving those at 50.
This was only for low density.
Okay, that's 50. And the high density would be 50 also.
Right, yeah.
And that's over there. Manufactured home would be also 50?
That's a nod yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, feels like we've got somewhere.
What's next?
We're done with what we did last month. Okay. Now, are we clear on 8A under Article 3? Did we get everything covered? Feel good about it? Now we're on to Articles 2 and 4, 2 hours into this. Ish. I'm thinking maybe we just cover 2, unless we can get through the whole thing.
All right, I can continue with the it's just a couple slides, I promise. Just to get through here. Article 2 is we just kind of portion off 2 separate, I guess, definitions types. We have standard definitions, which are kind of traditional definitions, and then we have measurement definitions, as you see, where we define how things are measured. So one of those measurement definitions would be the one on the right here, the usable floor area. We just like to make sure calculations are all accounted for to the best of their ability, to the best we can. And you know, that would be an example of how you calculate usable floor area. So also we like to have visuals in our definitions. That one on the left is actually just a visual for signs. Obviously there's text that goes along with it, but in the text always rules in the event of conflict. However, we like to have definitions have some visuals in there too. Definitions are kind of a weird topic to go over in a presentation, to be honest, because they're all, it's a huge list, and there's not a ton of glamour, I suppose, to the definitions, but it's just something that we've, it's more so something that kind of comes together at the end of the process, as you kind of know what your intention is with each term that you're defining as a frequently used term. So I'm not, in this presentation, I'm not really totally dwelling on the definitions portion in a major way. So I'm going to jump over to Article 4, and I'll just present and then allow you to discuss as relevant, whether you want to discuss anything on Article 2 or 4. But
I reserve Article 2
4
discussion.
is mostly these, mostly the use. Or do you want to discuss Article 2 right now? Does that work better?
I think we should go to two.
Yeah, let's,
Hey, Andy, could I
Okay.
add just one comment on the definitions? So I
Yeah,
would
of course.
say the biggest change that we've made with these definitions is that we've made sure that every single use is defined. And so, and all of the definitions are referenced, somewhere in the text is the big, there was a lot of definitions there was a lot of uses previously that were not defined. And so that was kind of one of the big changes that we've made.
So do we just start and go alphabetically? Like,
With
anybody
comments that we
questions
have?
on A?
I mean, if you've got a list,
I got a list.
yeah, I see your list, I'm excited.
Well, I have a ton too, but I did them in alphabetical order.
Well, so did I, because I was going through them.
Okay.
But bungalow, courts, and cottage cluster are not included in the definitions that I saw. To that last point.
4.11?
Yeah, but in the definitions.
Oh, there.
I think we might call that dwelling units, comma, cottage cluster.
Yeah.
Okay, I suggest that we don't do that because that's not how it is in section 4.
Okay.
But do you want to start with A, Rhonda?
That's what I thought we could do.
All right.
Anybody have any issues with A? Or sorry, you should leave this, Dan.
No, I like this, you guys have a list, I want you to keep going.
I do. I have a question of why we have accessory building versus accessory building minor when the example that's giving an accessory building is a detached private garage, and isn't that in both definitions?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Mindy?
No. Accessory building versus accessory building minor. The example that's given in the accessory building definition is a detached private garage, but isn't a detached private garage both an accessory building and accessory building minor?
It could be, yeah.
So why do we need two different definitions?
Just because we differentiate, the regulations are different if it's a minor. If it's a minor accessory building, we don't issue a land use permit for it. And it
But-
has different setback requirements.
But the minor says it's anything over some feet and greater than 200 feet, so I would think a minor would be less than. Or did I read that wrong?
Well, it's 200 square feet or less.
It says an accessory building that exceeds 200 square feet or is greater than 12 foot high. Oh, shall not. There's that part I missed, the shall not.
There you go.
I think the intent was to also regulate tall, like if it's less than 200 square feet, but it's also greater than 12 feet, then it also would be subject to the setback requirements.
Like if it had a room above or something, okay.
And the reason that we changed it from 100 feet to 200 feet was for consistency with county building code.
Like it. Anything else on A?
There's an extra period in automobile service.
Did you add anything on the charging stations, electrical, under automobile?
We did. We had some. We added the site standards as a part of the parking requirements.
Okay, but we have automobile gas station.
But if you go, if there's someplace in here that says that.
There was a
charging
reference.
goes back to.
Yeah.
the auto- So a charging station is considered, again, as
Falls under that.
Okay.
automobile station somewhere.
Did you catch the 2-period comma, Andy? Okay, just want to make sure. Any other A's? There's only like one left. Into B's.
Why is fifth wheel in quotes and there should be no S after wheel on fifth wheel?
I agree.
And Dan, could I just make one suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend if we could send any grammatical edits to either, you could send them directly to Andy and CC me, or I can get them to Giffords Webster. But I think just as we go through these work sessions, it would be
Quicker?
quicker to,
I like it.
anything that's content-based should be discussed here, but any grammatical changes.
What's next?
I'm going to G.
I'm going to C.
Okay.
Crematorium. What about an animal crematorium? Because, with pets and everything, should that not be included?
I would think it would be included. I would think that would be,
So this specifically speaks to human remains.
Let's add
I think
the
we
word
can-
"and animal."
I think that would be appropriate.
There you go.
Okay.
Anything else under C?
No.
Okay, what's the next one? You got G, what do you
D.
got? D.
What about dark sky? I know that there's information in the residential business district about lighting and such. And I know there probably was great discussion during the subcommittee. I feel it's quite important, especially like in, the area of East Bay to put something in place for dark sky.
As a blanket over all zones?
Yeah, you're describing a police power dark sky ordinance, which is a thing.
Is that police power?
Can be.
I have seen residential lighting be regulated through police power, and one benefit of that is that there's not the legal non-conforming, so it's basically when that goes into place, it applies to all residential lighting. I think,
Okay.
one challenge is going out and, figuring out lighting fixtures when they were installed, if they predated the new zoning amendment. So, we do have dark sky provisions for our commercial multifamily uses. I think they're working well, and with this ordinance, we've strengthened them. We've reduced the number of foot candles that can be at the property line and those types of things. But I do think
But
if.
that's not police power, right?
That's
That is
zoning.
still- okay.
But I do think if there is an interest in regulating residential scale lighting, from an enforcement standpoint, I think it would be best done through a police power or general law ordinance.
For the purpose of this definitions, would we be defining dark sky compliance or dark sky lighting or the concept of dark sky? What would be the thing?
I think all of it, to be fair.
Yeah, I just don't know if we need, if the goal was to create something like that, I don't know if we need it in here, because it's be a standalone ordinance altogether. That would have its own list of definitions that would blanket
Okay, so we
all of
wouldn't put it
this.
here, we could put it elsewhere. From
Yeah.
what I'm hearing? Okay.
We've gotten a few comments in
Yes.
in relation to that.
Public.
Mhm. Is that something that you guys touched on a bit in the committee meetings?
Don't remember.
We're, obviously in favor of it, but I don't remember a exact discussion about it. However, in conceptually, I mean, we have the diameter, breast height defined. So I don't see why a dark sky couldn't be defined in some way.
Well, I would say the diameter at breast height is that helps for figuring out how to measure the diameter of the trees.
No,
when
no,
we're implementing the
I understand. It's just that
There's no harm.
it's not harm in
Well,
putting it in.
I guess my question was, in what context are we defining dark sky?
Right.
If we're gonna- A dark sky, or is that a term that comes with specific, I know with certain lighting equipment it does, but we need to be more specific, I think, if we're going to define something.
That's my concern, because we've got it for the commercial, which I think is pretty well spelled out what we expect there, right? But we don't have it for residential, so if we put it in there, how are we, I don't know. I don't know, I'm just kind of like thinking out loud. Does it blanket across East Bay Township, or is it specific to the only zone that has the dark sky compliance right now?
Yeah, if we define dark sky, we would have to have regulations and requirements that refer back to that in the zoning ordinance.
So it'd be the commercial, not residential.
I think we should add residential, that's what I'm saying.
I'm totally in favor of that. You've heard my complaint
Yep.
about,
Yeah, so.
Runway lights next door.
We would put a definition and then we'd come back.
And address it through zoning?
Yep, that's what I'm asking for.
What are the thoughts of everybody else? I guess personally, I'd rather, if we're gonna go down that rabbit hole, I'd rather blanket the whole township with the police power, because I think it's a thing. I've seen them in many places. It's not unique. But what do you guys think? I mean, I just wonder, how often has this come up?
The only thing that I will say is that we already, were you here when we tried to get a lighting standard from the planning commission to the township board, and the township board said no? And
I
kicked
can't
it back?
remember.
Was it commercial or residential?
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
How does it work in practice, if this would be a zoning thing or a police power? What?
They would apply.
Just trying to think, I'm asking, I don't know.
Yeah.
So if it was a zoning requirement, the day that the zoning went into, this zoning requirement went into effect, any existing residential
Would be
lighting that is not in
grandfathered.
compliance would be grandfathered in. So it'd be legal non-conforming.
That's the bad part.
So I think, from my perspective, we have a good handle on our commercial developments. They go through site plan review. We review lighting, and we have for years. I think if we had a zoning requirement tied to lighting requirements, it would be very difficult to enforce it.
Yeah.
If we enacted a police power or general law ordinance, and again, we would need legal counsel, but from my perspective, then the day that goes into effect, that would apply to every property.
And it would be enforced via complaints?
Yes.
Yes.
I think the police power is a better way of doing it.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea. Because I agree, we can't. We cannot, as a township, regulate
He doesn't want that
that.
on his list.
Claire's like, I don't
Is
know.
that something that maybe we could run up the chain of command as something that they'd want to tackle? Because I'd hate to have,
Aren't we having a township joint meeting coming?
Yeah.
So it goes back to you.
that'd be a good one to
So take it to Board of Trustees.
kick around.
Okay. See if there's an appetite now where there wasn't historically, is what I'm hearing you say, Mindy. Okay.
I'd like Bill to go visit every property owner with the tape measure.
He doesn't want that on his list.
With a tape
He's not
measure,
keeping his own,
you're
but-
pretty good. Einstein would love you.
Have to do it at night, too.
All right.
What about drip line? Do we need roofs in there? Sorry, I'm gonna.
It's okay. Keep going.
We'll jump you in the parking lot. I'll drip
We said
line
we're only
you.
gonna get through 2 tonight. That's Dan said.
Meaning an addition of a definition for drip
Because
line?
roofs have a drip line.
Oh, drip line.
Don't we have that covered in our measurements?
That's what I was thinking, that's covered in the measurements.
Okay,
Maybe.
let's make sure.
And actually, Andy, maybe that's a good one to reference, because when I was looking through all the different zoning criteria, you have like a reference picture, right? Which I think is awesome. And it's a good way to kind of apply what all those measurements look like.
Absolutely.
Could you also update in each one of those what the heights are? Because like, as an example, in the regional business district, I think there's a picture of a house, and it's got, it says on the side on the picture, like maximum of 40 foot or 35 foot or something like that. Could you just move the applicable max height over to that picture as well? Because there's offsetting information in a lot of those, where the numbers that are allowed in that zoning criteria don't match what's on the picture. It sounds simple, but I can totally see someone getting confused.
Yeah, I think so. So I guess your question, I'm sorry, just to totally understand the question.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, is it the district height
Yes.
sheet that confuses you? Okay.
Yep. Only in the fact that when I was looking at each one of them, and specifically the business one jumped out at me. Hold on.
Oh yeah, RB, we actually, that's actually a typo. I mean, yeah, we have to update that. So that's actually our mistake, that we obviously need to update there, but even if it's updated,
No, just make sure that those correlate.
okay. Yep. Thank you.
No wonder they're confusing. They're wrong.
So are we saying that the roof drip line is in the measurement?
I was just gonna try.
I'm gonna try to.
I was gonna pick one up.
All right, you've got electronic, I'll let you take it.
Find the
Andy,
right
can you respond to that on the drip line? I don't think that was in there. I don't recall it being in there.
You're on mute.
I don't think we have drip line as a measurement, but I think we regulate it.
With respect to the roof?
I think we include it in we even cite it in the ordinance. I guess that's kind of what I'm.
Drip line is in the definitions in 219. And I'm asking, should roofs be included there? Because roofs have a drip line. You put that on the parking lot.
Yeah, let me look at that, because for some reason some reason my draft I'm operating, so where on 219 does it say drip line, I suppose?
It's under the, yeah, it's 219. It just says drip line, an imaginary vertical line extending downward from the outermost tips of tree branches to the ground.
So I think, Rhonda, you might have an older version
I was
of
just gonna
it.
say, it's not, I'm
not
looking at
on
the
mine.
new one, and
it's
it's
not
not
on
on
mine.
mine. I'm like going, where?
And I
I'm
think
going,
that we
where is it?
I think we removed some
drip lines?
definitions that were
Okay,
not,
and I
if
did
they weren't
reprint.
referenced in the text. So
Okay,
think
I didn't
as we
reprint.
went
My
through-
apologies. Okay, never mind. I own that one.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Okay. All right. I'll pass. Sorry.
Any more Ds?
No.
E's, do I hear E's? F?
G, I know we got a G.
Mindy, we're at you, G.
Oh, golf course. Why do we say 9 holes? Because as I recall, Elmbrook was talking about doing a smaller, what did they call it, an executive course over there?
They were talking, I believe, about 12 holes, but I haven't heard any discussion of anything less than 9.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't think we need to limit it to 9. I would think that we can really,
Is there such a thing as less than a
I don't know.
9-hole course?
Not that I know
Yeah, it's
of,
called
but
putt-putt.
I don't know if from a zoning perspective, we can
Right.
mandate at
Yeah, I
least
don't think so.
Some people do put a golf course hole in their property. One,
Putting greens or whatever?
no,
Or
a full hole.
Oh,
A full hole, okay.
There's a guy on the fence that has a full 9-hole.
Well,
For a golf course, but
okay, so we've got the electronic version of
I think,
it. Sorry.
Gs. Any more Gs?
What have we concluded on golf?
yeah.
leave it at 9.
At 9, thank you.
Okay. I was thinking they were trying to go to 6, so I was just trying to figure out how to let them.
Yeah, I remember something about 12. Something like that sounds familiar.
Age,
H, on to H.
hotel, motel. I didn't see boarding house defined. Or apartment.
Boarding house.
Or lodging
Okay,
house.
boarding house.
Lodging house is defined, but
Okay.
boarding house and apartment are not.
Interesting.
Andy, did you hear that?
Yep, I did hear that. So boarding house is not defined, but it's mentioned. But lodging house is,
An apartment is not.
yes.
But if you're
Apartment
going
is-
to distinguish between them, you need to have them defined.
Yeah, we should just get rid of apartment and just say, or multifamily dwelling, or however we define that.
That's fine with me, I just wanted to point it out.
I agree. Be
I
consistent.
believe we had a discussion on removing the definition of boarding and rooming houses.
Then we
So I
can
just
just
wanna
take
make
it
sure
out
that-
of here then.
Yeah, I think we did, just because they are covered in other definitions.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that was done at a subcommittee meeting. I just want to, I'm trying to remember why, because I mean, I think they're a use that is, not something we should just forget about and have be a use, unlisted use. I think they are uses in communities.
Yeah, so we do allow for lodging and boarding houses as a specific principal permitted use in our
Yep, in
residential
HDR,
districts.
okay.
So we should, I guess, just define it.
Yeah, so I think we want to define all really 3 of those terms: rooming houses, boarding houses, and lodging houses. Just sync them up as one, and then refer to it in this hotel's definition. That's a good call out there.
I.
I go to L.
We're going to add impervious surface, so we just want to count that, right?
Yes.
That's a good one, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, keyhole. Is there an opportunity to strengthen that a little bit? Just understanding we've had numerous challenges in the lakes area. I think we need some more meat on the bone for that one.
Is funnel development defined?
No, I've never heard it called a funnel.
I've never heard that
development.
term either, that's why I was asking. At least define that. I don't know what that means. What's a funnel development?
Bringing everybody into the same spot.
Yeah. it's
Provide an
kind of
easement.
interchangeable
Well, with keyhole, it's,
Yeah.
okay, vice versa.
Okay.
But, yeah, we've had a number of challenges with this.
I've never heard keyhole either.
Yeah. Well, I had to look it up, I learned it, believe me.
So, in all honesty, though, fine them both.
What particular,
A little more guidance on just the specific additional.
I was hoping somebody else had something a little bit stronger that we could use. I don't know if what we had before, is there,
what issue are you trying to solve?
we want to make sure that it's extremely clear that keyholing is not allowed, with a little bit stronger definition here, because people do struggle with the word. And we have had keyholing challenges on the lake. And so I just want to, it's a tough one. I get that. I guess we could do some research and bring it back with some stronger language. And I'm happy to work on that. Or
Sounds like a good
Andy, if-
parking lot.
A good parking lot. Or, you know, Andy, if you've got some stronger language used elsewhere, if we could look at that. Okay, parking lot, that, but yes. I
Yeah, we'll
would-
take a look.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
L.
Laundry or dry cleaning establishment, these are very different uses of properties, although they sometimes, many times are together, and I think that they should be defined separately.
Do you think they should be allowed in different districts? Or what districts would you say would each be appropriate in?
So I was concerned, and one of the districts allows them as a personal service. I don't think dry cleaning should be a personal service. I think laundry as a personal service is fine, but dry cleaning is not.
Okay. What district would you think dry cleaning was appropriate in? Or would it be special land use as opposed to?
Well, but the dry cleaning can be two different things, right? It can be that they have on-site dry cleaning or off-site dry cleaning. And if it's an off-site dry cleaning, I don't have a problem with the, being in the regional business or whatever. It's that on-site dry cleaning that is a potential problem. And I would like to see those in the more commercial, industrial type areas.
Maybe limit it to industrial? Okay.
Yeah, the chemicals used.
But laundry service is a very different animal, and I don't think that is a problem, and
Do we even have anything in East Bay?
Isn't there one right over there by Holiday Road?
Yeah.
Yeah, they open, close, and open, close a couple.
Holiday Road?
Right at the end of there.
across the street from Burger King?
Yes.
Oh, that's a dry cleaner. No, I meant a laundry,
Oh.
like, a laundromat.
Eastfield is.
That's not in our,
Garfield.
that's not our township. We don't have one.
No, I know, I was thinking, I'm just thinking.
Any other Ls?
No,
No. Ms?
just the one with the parking lot.
I did ask Claire about the marijuana smelling, but she shared that it was related to the state law and their spelling, so.
Okay. I got one on marina, not marina specialty, marina.
Straight marina, okay.
This one is that I suggest that you're talking about a facility that is owned or operated by a person is on Grand Traverse Bay or extends into. I mean, you have nothing mentioned about Grand Traverse Bay.
Yeah, and yes,
Go-
we did send that edit to Giffords Webster, but it was after the fact, so that needs to be changed.
Okay, and when it comes to the services, to the public members of the marina for docking, loading, I suggest you add fueling and sanitary pump outs or other servicing and recreational crafts. So it's just those additional services of fueling and sanitary pump outs, which was in the old definition.
I think that the updated definition there was mirrored the Eagle definition, and that's part of the oversight where the inland lakes was incorporated where it should not have, because they're only allowed on East Grand Traverse Bay. But I think there was a desire to be consistent with the Eagle definition for marina.
Okay, but well, that being that case then, do you want to take out extends into or over the inland lakes or streams?
Yes,
You're
is
gonna-
coming out, yeah.
So then it's just going to be facilitated, operate on Grand Traverse Bay, period, and then office services. Okay.
Is it a facility that is operated by a person? Shouldn't it be a person, entity, or corporation or something?
That's fair. That's fair. Person,
It could also probably include other uses. Heaven forbid a marina have a restaurant associated with it, or a pool.
Right, and the regional business district allows for combination of uses, so for reviewing the marina use, we'd only be looking at the marina, but with like a site plan, we'd be looking at those other uses. and
Okay.
combine.
so would you put the word in commercial, a commercial facility that is owned or operated, take out by a person on Grand Traverse Bay? And office,
That sounds good to me.
okay.
Yeah, we can amend this accordingly.
Versus service to public or members of the marina, docking, loading, so they're not renting or anything like that, right?
With the marina?
Right.
They could be.
They could be
You
renting.
could be, yeah.
For loading and other servicing, okay. And
Yeah.
that's where we want to add the pump out and the fueling.
Pump out and fueling, yeah.
Well, part of the challenge that we ran into with, we actually went to the ZBA for an interpretation. I think Paul was on the ZBA then.
No,
There-
I don't think so.
You were?
No,
Okay, it was
I
before you
missed that
were
one.
there. But there was confusion because we said that TC Water Sports was a marina. They were operating like a marina. Their intensity of use is like a marina. But then they didn't meet the definition because we had so many specific requirements for what a marina entails. So if we are more general and refer to the Eagle definition, then there's a lower threshold for what a marina is. We have more uses that would meet the requirements of a marina and be subject to the ordinance and be regulated as a marina.
And I think other servicing of recreational watercraft covers just about everything.
But those other things are specific.
I think overly specific is what we found through the ZBA process.
Didn't it have something to do with storage?
The
Didn't
fuel.
Storage.
Fueling, too.
I thought at the ZBA it was the storage.
It was the seasonal storage. Required seasonal storage.
Then I think you need to have that in there. If that's what the decision was, right?
The decision of the ZBA was that based on our ordinance, TC Water Sports was not a marina.
Was not, you're right.
But I think the policy direction, or my recommendation would be to be more inclusive, to of more uses on East Grand Traverse Bay be considered a marina so that they are reviewed and processed as a marina use to lower the threshold so that some of our jet ski, the jet ski and boat rental operations are reviewed as marinas.
Okay.
It would fall under the Eagle definition is where we're trying to go.
Yeah, that was Ted's last meeting, I think.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any other M's? Anything else in your list?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
There's half the alphabet left.
yeah.
okay. Let's
I've
keep,
got
keep
O.
moving.
I've got O. Outdoor showers. Should there not be a definition? I'm seeing those being placed around the lakes. People are adding outdoor showers to their homes and cottages. And they'll store within the 50-foot setback.
Structures. I don't know. Wouldn't that be a structure?
Is it a structure? Is an outdoor shower a structure?
Is it less than 200 square foot?
Yes.
Probably.
I would think so because it's,
Well,
no?
we do not, we regulate structures that are less than 200 square. We regulate all structures within the 50-foot setback. So
I said my shower's 200.
Okay.
I
Keep
don't want to know
going.
that, thanks.
I would say that the way our ordinance is drafted, a outdoor shower, if it's just like mounted to like a pole or a tree or something, it would be probably considered a structure if it's permanently affixed to the ground. I would think that some might not be.
Usually they're on a small deck or something.
Okay, so that would be a structure.
But if it's already on the structure that was approved, does it change anything?
If it's within the 50-foot setback, it shouldn't be allowed. Except they're out
But I
there
mean,
using shampoos
on a
and
deck that was
soaps.
already there,
Oh.
not a new deck. Because obviously the deck is a structure.
I think we should look at that. You can put it on the
Okay.
parking lot, but we can look at that. Outdoor storage personal. It's not more than 4 boats, trailers, campers, motorhomes, jet skis, snowmobiles, and other. It's a combination of any, right?
Right.
Use that term combo in another definition, so I think we should use that combination of any 4. Okay. Watercraft storage, a watercraft that's not on a trailer, sitting on the ground within the 50-foot setback. We see a lot of people who will pull their boats up. They don't have a trailer, so they simply sit there. I'm concerned about, it's an environmentally sensitive area, and, they're probably servicing their boat there. To winterize it. I'd like us to consider something regarding that.
Under outdoor storage personal?
Yeah, because it's their personal boat.
Right,
Yeah, they're storing
right.
their boat.
I just wondered if this
Yep.
was an extension of that.
Yeah, or, I don't know, that's where I think it fits,
Yeah.
personally. Anybody have any thoughts on that? You guys are gonna ambush me in the parking lot, aren't you?
Is it,
I don't know.
is it not allowed to store a boat or something like that within your 50-foot?
We don't have anything currently.
Right, right.
So the definition would then be outdoor storage for watercraft?
Yeah, personal watercraft without a trailer residing on the ground within the 50-foot setback due to the environmentally sensitive area.
So it's not,
we would not allow it.
Finding it here, it'd be better to put it in the use
50-foot
standards for the
setback.
environmental sensitive areas. In that place where, where it says no
In the use standards?
Well, where it's, where we limit the docks and the other things like that.
Okay.
You put a statement in there that says you can't store stuff in there.
Certain things, like,
What do you think?
because I could see having a
If we say
paddle
something
boat.
right here, it's not a definition, it's more.
Yeah, we're not really
Yeah.
defining both,
Okay.
but we could have it be a required.
A use standard?
Standard
Okay.
can be.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Redirect that.
Is that concern tied to like the engine itself and the servicing of it right there on
And
site?
it's impervious surface, it's sitting there all winter with snow and
Are you
rain.
thinking just motorized boats?
Yes, motorized.
Not Canoes?
No, motorized, yeah, I'm just thinking motorized.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for
Stuff
asking that
with
question.
fuels.
And, yeah, okay.
P?
Personal service, please remove the dry cleaning.
Please remove dry cleaning establishments.
No, personal service, it says that the person can do barbershops, beauty shops, tanning and nails, massage, garment repair, laundry, or dry cleaning establishments. Let's remove dry cleaning, please.
Got it. Makes sense.
Can you help me with park private?
Yeah, so, I think and Andy, feel free to jump in, but the park private is basically it's a non-commercial park, so if it's like, if a, multifamily development goes in, you have like a dog park, so it's for
Okay.
just the residents or just that individual community, it's
Oh,
not
okay.
like a public, it's not open to the public.
Right,
Okay,
that makes sense.
okay, thank you. I wasn't following that, okay. And
You
then
better not have
permanent-
any queues.
Huh?
You better not have any
I'm still
queues.
the keys. Permanent dock, an Eagle permit is required. Should that be in there?
Permanent.
I don't have
I
permit.
don't have.
There's
it.
permanent
Figure out-
dock.
I'm rolling into my current online since I had Claire print this for me previously and didn't kill another tree, so thank you. I'm scooping on.
Keep going, keep going.
But it's good that you're catching some of those, though, because we caught them later.
Okay, so public access has been removed, right? Yeah, public park. Okay. What have you got?
No queues.
No queues.
What's your next letter, Mindy?
R, recreation unit.
Okay.
I just struggled with the word in here, motive power. I think it's the wrong word, but I'm not sure because motive is a word. But I don't know that it has to be steam or water power, so.
Under recreational unit.
Yeah, whether. And the second line,
Yeah. Okay.
I think it should just remove the word motive, and it's just, it has its own power,
Okay.
but I'm not sure if that is where people wanted to go with that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, they're talking about the Winnebago versus the, something you push. or
You might
pull.
say mobility. Because
Which
it's,
either has its own power or is mounted or drawn by another vehicle. I think the word between own and power can just be removed.
but power is gonna, I would interpret that as like electrical in the context of what we're reading it. Not necessarily motive, can it drive or not?
Definition of motive.
Its own motive power.
So strike motive.
Was there a reason, Andy, that that word was used?
It's a good question. I would need to look back on how we arrived at that. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I had to look up the definition because I didn't know what it was, so it's per Webster, it's an agency used to impact motion, especially to machinery. And the agency is usually steam or water. I learned something new today, but I don't think that that fits right there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't fit.
Any other Rs?
That'd be good if eliminated.
I do residential cluster subdivision, unless I'm wrong and maybe it's under something else. I don't see cluster defined, but the cluster is in the definition of the residential cluster.
Guess I'm not sure if we need to define cluster, just because we differentiate residential subdivision from a residential cluster in the standards.
But you're using the word cluster in the definition of a residential cluster.
Yeah.
That's what is concerning to me.
But the cluster piece is defined, what makes it a cluster is defined in the standards. You know, what allows it to
So
be.
can then we just
the-
reference the standard where it defines what a cluster is there then? See section whatever?
Andy, does that make sense?
Yeah, so in the definition, refer to the, what is that, section 3.9 or something along those lines that administers the residential clusters? Is that what you're thinking?
Just residential cluster subdivision is subdivision of land which contains one or more clusters of housing. Yeah, it's not defined.
It's not a definition because it's just a circular.
Yeah, it's reusing the word cluster, and we're defining cluster. I think that, yeah, I see what she's saying. Does that make sense, Claire?
Yeah, it seems like with the residential cluster subdivision, you want to differentiate it from a traditional residential subdivision, so.
But you don't wanna say-
Subdivision of land which contains, you know, preserves open space, yeah, we can define it differently without using the word cluster, and then refer back to the section where the standards are.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Claire. Just add a little bit to it on how the intent of it is to preserve open space and allow for a little bit more density because of that in areas. Yep.
Any other Rs pop out?
I think there's a lot of road definitions, and I just want to make sure we need all of them.
There are a lot of road definitions.
Because, I mean, some of them overlap, and I don't know that we need all of them.
Andy, do you think you guys could just take one fresh look at all of the road definitions and just make sure that they're all necessary?
10, 12.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll just make sure they're all used in some way. Because if they're not, honestly, I don't know if marginal access road is, to be quite honest.
That's what I was just looking at, I'm like, why do we need that?
Yeah.
There's a new use I learned about under S, but we don't need to get into that right now.
There's a lot of those.
And for self-preservation purposes, and I know that we're all the way to S, after 3 hours of this, I'm gonna tap out. If everybody else is feeling okay about that.
Say that again?
At 9:30, I feel like we've done brain damage for ourselves for the evening.
What time is it?
Well enough. It's 1:15.
Oh, I'm good with that.
I don't have any.
I've been up since 5.
Yeah, ditto. Do you have any others on the list?
I don't want to see it.
One of those.
You're
Go ahead, Mindy. You're up.
I'm leaving it up to
There's
you.
like 800 sign definitions, but I was wondering if we need a definition of a political sign. Because as I recall, though I didn't go back and look, that they have different requirements than other signs.
Yeah, about how soon they can go up prior to an election and
Okay.
when they have to be removed after.
Yeah, Andy, do you guys want to just go and review the sign definitions? Maybe do one review of those and see if any can be removed and if a definition for political sign needs to be added.
Yeah, we'll do exactly that. I think the way the political signs one was currently drafted was a bit, or that currently exists, or I just remember viewing one at one point that was a little bit iffy. So I think we just want to make sure if we are including it, we have a reason to, because we don't want to, I don't think we want to start regulating in that direction. So.
Yeah, but we don't want a million of them up for 3 months.
Yeah, so right now our regulations are not content neutral, so they're not, we regulate signs based on whether they're real estate or political, but there may be some
I thought there was
case
some
law that says that we can regulate political signs.
I thought it had to be done within so many hours of the election being over and that kind of thing, so,
I thought that's, yeah, because I think Beth and I had that conversation.
yeah. But I thought somebody needs to go back to the sign ordinance and look at what it says and what we need to define.
Oh, yours, Mindy.
That's all I got.
Yeah, we might be able to regulate timeframes for temporary signs, but besides that, I think it might be kind of difficult.
Okay, so it feels like that's what we've got for Article 2. And for fear of mental instability, I'm gonna say that we could probably address 4 at a later date.
Yeah, I would recommend that we, at the May 21st meeting, we do 4 and maybe 5, or 5 and 6, and then we add June 18th is the, do another planning commission work session, so maybe we finish up the zoning ordinance, as opposed to trying to finish it up in one work session, maybe we do 2 more work sessions to finish it up, and then we look to schedule the joint meeting in July, as opposed to June,
Well,
if that works.
I think that's a good idea.
I do too.
Yeah. Because we've still got a parking lot that we need to address, a new parking lot. And,
To be confused.
but I feel good about, we touched on a lot of the comments that we got earlier, plus a whole bunch more.
That's what I was trying to do, is make sure we, yeah, okay.
Does everyone feel okay with that plan?
Thanks, guys.
Oh, we're back to public comment. You get another crack at it. Come on up.
I'll be quick. My name is David Lansky. I don't need that.
You do.
I'm a new resident, moved here a couple of years ago from Arizona, so like the gentleman who left, who came here from Florida, we came here from Arizona. My background is as a real estate attorney. I've done real estate development for 40 years, mostly shopping centers, office buildings, mixed-use projects and the like. And I do want to speak just briefly on the, whether we put that definition in or take it out, comment that was discussed. I'll tell you that by putting it in my view, you switch the burden of proof for enforcement. You make it now your job to prove that it is not a non-conforming use, as opposed to the user or the property owner having to establish that his use, even though it's prohibited under the current ordinance, is somehow grandfathered in as a prior non-conforming use. Switching the burden of proof makes all the difference in these types of cases. One of my focuses is taking old drive-through legacy restaurants in California where all drive-throughs have been outlawed for years. But if you can find a Burger King or a Jack in the Box that's not performing well, buy that property, lease it to Chick-fil-A, you can make millions. And whether or not you are able to establish that that drive-through lane is a non-conforming use is everything. And in this context, Lakemore should have to come forward, at least on Arbutus Lake, and say, all of our pontoon rentals all of our speedboat rentals, the stuff we're doing on both sides of the lake, that's a prior non-conforming use. And if you wanted to enforce it, you could say, well, you know, Max Landing had fishing boats. If you want to have fishing boats, you can have fishing boats. But what you've done is you've expanded this prior non-conforming use. Very similar to what you told the gentleman about his billboard. He wants to move his billboard. He's got to comply with the new ordinance. So I think that putting this definition in, establishing that prior non-conforming uses are allowed, makes you have to demonstrate that their use is not a non-conforming use. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult for you to enforce the rules that are out there now. You know, there's a whole bunch of people on the lake that are upset with that operation simply because lack of manpower, and you know, they have first mover advantage. They go and do it, you enforce it, they find another way around it. So we appreciate your service. We know you're all volunteers. You're trying to do what's best for the community. I wrote you an email that outlined a lot of my concerns. I'm not going to go into any of that. You can read it at your convenience. I would appreciate it if you did. But we would like to have the primary residential character of the Forest Lakes region preserved and not use words like marinas or specialty marinas or cabin courts or any of the stuff that's not presently allowed and is outlawed in this area, and somehow codify it and give them cover to argue and make it even more difficult to enforce what you guys are trying to implement through this ordinance. I thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you.
Hello, Carol Husel. So many people brought up lots of good points about the specialty marina or livery, and thank you all for thinking about it, but I have a few more things for you to consider when you move forward with that at your May 21st meeting. What if the boat rental is not affiliated with a cabin court? What if that boat rental is affiliated with a short-term rental or just a property owner? What one of the concerns is about the rental boats on the inland lakes is the quality, not the quality, excuse me, the quantity of rental boats on the inland lakes. Now, there's some that are there now, but what can happen in the future? Could any household buy a boat and rent it out? Does that need to be regulated? And what type of boat rental? Our lakes do have what scientists call is a capacity. And if we, I fear that if we don't have something that puts a limit on it or stops it, that we could have individual property owners renting wake boats on our lake and having people from all over coming in and renting it. And then another topic is, who are the boats rented to? It could be that, like traditionally those cabin courts had the little rowboats or fishing boats, and they rented them to the people they were renting the cabin to. But that rental can go farther. People from outside the lake can come in and rent it. So there's other topics within that specialty marina. Another thing to consider is, I don't understand this, obviously you folks might too, but what about the cabin courts that have turned into condos? How does that fall into this? Because it has happened, and they may possibly be renting boats. And then little things to consider with things you've talked about tonight. With the limit of the vehicle storages on the property to the 4, maybe not. You could consider, are they licensed? Whether it's a vehicle, a boat, and is it currently licensed? And 2 other things in regards to water quality. Is it something that can be regulated with the emptying of Whirlpool, the chemically treated water? That seems to be on an increase in the inland lakes, and if that is being dumped and flowing into the water, that's really not acceptable for our water environment. And then you folks have talked about it a few times in the past, and it's been kind of poo-pooed, so to speak. But there have been private privies on private property for extended time periods, and I don't think that's a good thing, and hope you consider that that's not allowed. Perhaps they could be, if there's a party on a one time a year, or, limited time, but to have it there for an extended time is not good for our groundwater. Thank you for all the work you've done, especially tonight.
Thank you. Going once, going twice. Okay, we're closing the public comment. We have an upcoming meeting date, May 7th at 6:30, and another special meeting, May 21st at 6:30 for the zoning ordinance, next special work session.
Mr. Chairman, I will not be at the May 21st meeting.
Okay, thanks for the heads up.
Andy, what articles are you thinking we'll be discussing at the May 21st meeting? It'll be 4, and what would be your recommendations?
I think we were planning on 5, but I think we want to attack 5 a little bit on a different night than 4, just because 5 is going to be pretty busy too. So maybe if we do 4, try to do like 4, 6, and 7 potentially. Just an idea maybe, and then do 5 on a totally separate meeting, because 5 is site standards, so 5 has a lot of content.
Okay, so 4, 6, and 7 on May 21st, and then June 18th would be Article 5.
Challenge accepted, Andy.
Okay.
Bring it on.
That sounds good.
Bring it on. All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
No, I don't have a 200 square foot shop.